So thank you everyone for coming here in holiday season, and we are all here to cheer the spirit of the holidays. So thanks a lot for coming here. Really appreciate it. And I myself am Saurabh Tandon. I am the Thai Silicon Valley board member and a charter member and sponsorship chair for ThaiCon. So I'm a volunteer here, like so many of my wonderful friends. So I just want to see a show of hands. Who are the people who are coming to Thai event for the first time? Oh wow, okay, that's quite a few. And just want to make a Thai pitch that Thai is a volunteer organization, it's a not-for-profit, and we have more than 40 events every year. The sponsorship is subsidized, it's just about $150 for the entire year, and you get all the events for free for doing that. And I just also want to give you some of the other programs which Thai does, Thai Silicon Valley. We also have a Thai Angels, which incubates a lot of startups. We have a Thai Launchpad, which is just about started this year. And besides having wonderful mentors from the leadership team here and charter members, we also have we give them $50,000 each to the companies and handhold them through the process. So that happens. We also have SIGs across various industries, like big data is one SIG, and there's cloud, and there's mobility, there's women, there's youth, etc. So we do that, and we run on a very lean staff, and we thank our volunteers here who do this. We have Ramesh Krishnan as part of the lean team here who does business development. We have Kelsey, we have Harini, we have Terry. So it's thanks to wonderful people like these that these events take place. I'd also like to get a show of hand for the charter members. Is there any charter members in the? Thank you so much for all that. So a charter member is for the people who are coming here for the first time, are people who have successfully done major exits and are in the giving back mode, and they help out and they give a lot to the entrepreneurs in various forms. So it's because of their support that we're able to kind of get so far and do so many of these things. Now the major pitch which we are doing also is ThaiCon 2014 is coming up, and if you all attended ThaiCon 2013, you have some sense on how big it was. We had more than 3,500 entrepreneurs who attended the event, and it was a major hit, and we had fantastic amount of sponsors who backed us for that. And being a not-for-profit, and we subsidize the entry fee also, so the sponsors are a very key and integral part of this. So I don't know if there are any sponsors here today. Would love to anyways thank them and acknowledge them, because it's because of their support here that we kind of always are able. Piyush is there from IBM, so IBM is a good supporter. Yeah, thanks a lot. So that makes a big difference to us. So that's all from me. I don't think you've come here to listen to me. I just got a chance to hold the mic, so I'm not letting it go. Yeah. So I'll get Piyush over now to kind of do the hand holding and do the training.
It was just
Thank you,
last
Saurabh, for the
December,
introduction.
around this time of the year, a friend and I at work were sitting down after lunch. And all of a sudden, while browsing the web and just chit-chatting, my friend's phone goes up and he gets summoned by the HR manager. He was gone for a good 45 minutes. 45 minutes later, he comes back with red ears, pale face, and tears in his eyes. And I asked him, Ramesh, what happened? It so happened that morning, just around lunchtime, Ramesh was browsing the web or doing holiday shopping. And on his list was a kitchen knife. And all he had done was search for kitchen knife. And there must have been something in his, in the IT system that triggered an alert to the IT and the network folks, and then they summoned the HR partner, and the HR partner summoned him and his manager to the room because they thought something fishy was going on. Why was somebody searching for a knife at workplace? What do you call this? Invasion of privacy? Or snooping? Move on to the next vignette. We all love shopping, don't we? At least the women do. The men like online shopping. I do online shopping. And isn't it a welcoming thing when you go in there to Amazon.com or eBay and see your name being recognized and your previous cart being populated and recommendations popping up as to what all you could like, what all you would like to buy. They would recommend you. And you like that. With a one-click shopping, you like that, right? That's personalization. The website knows your behaviors, knows who you are, and is able to personalize the behavior accordingly. Now, that is the personalization part of it, which we all love. But the same cookie that was used for personalization can now be tracked by the government or by anybody else who wants to sell the data, and somebody wants to hack into your computer and find those cookies and take it away. Well, there goes your privacy. So, as you see, privacy and personalization are two sides of the same coin. And that's the very topic we are going to talk about today. Hi, my name is Piyush Malik. I work for IBM. I'm leading the Big Data Center of Excellence at IBM Worldwide. And at TIE, my role is, besides being a sponsor here, is I'm the co-chair for the Big Data programs at TIE, TIECon 2013. I work with some of my colleagues here, with Karthik. Karthik happens to be the co-chair of the programs here as well with me. So, Karthik and I decided to put together this program for you today. And Karthik is a founder of CETAS, which was acquired recently, a couple of years back, and he was at Pivotal until very recently, and he's now dabbling into the startup world once again. So, without much further ado, let me introduce Karthik to the table here and to the podium here. Please welcome him, and then he will bring on his panel. Panelists, please come on. Dhruva from Facebook, Sanjay from Symantec, and Mahesh from Tiger. And over to you, Karthik.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a couple of slides as well that we will go through in terms of content. What we wanted to do in this discussion was, talk about the concept of privacy versus personalization, but also talk about some content. What got us here? What are the technologies used? What is the opportunity for entrepreneurs, and what can you get out of it, right? So, as I introduce the panelists, they'll come up and introduce themselves and go through some content. But I want to kick it off with a couple of things. Who here has not heard about Snowden or the NSA recently? Show of hands, anyone? I was driving up here on the radio, NPR. They had a whole series of talkers all day today about various things that they are still identifying about exactly what happened. One of the more important things is they don't even know how many documents he really possesses at this point. Apparently, up to 1.6 million documents were available for him to copy, but they don't know. The one thing they did was they killed SharePoint usage within the NSA at this point, which is certainly not the answer to the problem. What we won't talk about Snowden or the NSA. Maybe we'll refer to all of that. But the concept here is, I like personalization. A lot of us like personalization, which means someone's got to be collecting data about us in order for you to get some personalized, targeted offers. Maybe you like this, maybe you like that. A lot of us on Netflix like those recommendations. People like, you watch this, or if you watch this, you will like this. A lot of shoppers on Amazon, which was one of the creators of recommendation engines, we like that. But at some point, it's not the technology that's the problem, but at some point, we have to figure it out into our workflow so our privacies are not compromised for the sake of something more personalized. So I think that exactly is the problem. At what point do you draw the line between personalization and privacy, and is technology going to enable both? Right? Clearly, I think so, and that's why we have a panel here who have different opinions. One of the things that we will cover, as we all have some experience in this, is what are the popular use cases? Why is tracking somebody important, right? What are the more popular use cases? And this is something that we as entrepreneurs can also relate to because the opportunities lie in these use cases. For example, in the previous startup that I was at, Cetus, one of the more important things that we serviced as a use case was e-commerce. Right? What we did was an analytics platform. We delivered analytics. A popular use case was e-commerce, where targeted advertisements or shopping products, etc., were placed in front of customers. And we've all seen them. Likewise, there are others that the panelists can talk about, and that's the importance in terms of opportunity. What is the opportunity out there? That's something we can all get out of this conversation. And then what does it mean as entrepreneurs, as technologists? Not only what do we build, but also what are our responsibilities while we build product? What should we be doing to safeguard our own privacies and for the rest of the world too? And I'm not going to go through this in a lot of depth. I have a blog post where I captured a lot of the Washington Post articles on the Snowden and the NSA case, going to highlight exactly how triangulations and correlations can be made. It's not just about a cookie. It's not just about where you went, what you browsed. It's more about building a profile about people, right? It's about cross-correlating, internet activities with phone call detail records, with other kinds of shopping or other behavior. So a whole profile is built about people and can be mined with technology now. And that essentially is at the core of the problem here is up to how much of that is okay for you to get personalized offers, and at what point is it kind of breaching into your privacy. So with that, I'm going to kind of jump in and introduce some of our panelists. First off is Dhruva from Facebook. He'll introduce himself. I won't go through exactly what he does at Facebook, but I'll leave it up to you to introduce yourself. And then Sanjay from Semantic, and Mahesh from Tiger Analytics. So we'll all take a couple of minutes to go through our opinions and some content, and then we will begin the panel discussion after that. Here we go.
Thank you, Kartik. So, hi guys, my name is Dhruva. I am a software engineer, mostly working on infrastructure side of things. And when Kartik asked me, saying that, hey, can you join us for a panel discussion on like personalization and big data? I said, oh yes, absolutely, because big data is something that I've been doing for a while. But then later on I found out that it is about privacy, right? And in my mind, privacy is more like an opinion rather than like a technology thing. So maybe there is nothing much I can contribute on privacy, but I'll definitely give you some of the things I have worked on and kind of explain where I think some of this, where some part of this industry might go. But my experience again is on infrastructure. So I build big data infrastructure. I have built like Hadoop file system. I'm one of the founding engineers for that open source project when I used to work at Yahoo. And now I'm building other infrastructure projects which basically scale out and let you compute or quantify a lot of these, or data mine from a lot of these opaque objects that we have. Earlier, I used to work on many file system software. I used to work on EFS, Andrew file system from Carnegie Mellon, like many years back. And then in the middle, I did some startup during the .com boom. Was kind of had an exit, which was, I didn't lose anything from my pocket, but it wasn't that successful. So that's where I have been, mostly on the infrastructure side. I have a set of slides which I have here mostly to kind of jumpstart a discussion, hopefully. Not like an end goal. The end goal is not that I know anything or I have figured out everything about this, but the main goal is to see if I can kind of tilt the audience in one direction. So 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 if you look at the history of some of these the government rules and regulations, right? So for example, income tax collection I'm talking about, 1862 or somewhere in the 80s. It's not absolutely clear when it started, but the moment 1862 the tax collection code started, you had a lot of people who helped out, who helped people filing their taxes. So there's some people who got employed just because the government decided to like do tax collection from people, right? Similarly, Truth of Lending Act of 1968. So they regulated a lot of stuff in the mortgage industry. So now if you buy a house or you buy a property, you have to like sign maybe like a few thousand documents before the thing is done. So there are a lot of people who do mortgages, right? They make their livelihood based on like mortgage industry. Similarly, SOX 2002, this is more recent, so I think everybody kind of has first-hand experience about this, how it kind of spawned a big set of industries to do compliance. So my question here is that if the government is not doing anything in the case of privacy, maybe it actually spawns a new set of industries which help people avoid such a thing, right? So that's what I meant by 2013. There are a lot of questions about privacy. So what can startups or entrepreneurs do to address this or take advantage of this solution? One obviously is to do cookies and personalization and sell stuff. But then how do you help people who don't like their personalization? Is there a startup which could help people do some of that stuff? So that was one question I had for the audience. Another question I have is at kind of at a very high level. So take for example spam, right? Like email spam or chat spam. There was a time when my spam was full of, where my mailbox was full of spam messages. This was like maybe 10 years back or something, right? Now spam is a solved problem, not because the government put in a lot of rules saying that you cannot send spam. If you look at our spam folder, there are like maybe thousands of messages you're getting, but it doesn't affect your life. So my argument here is that, is there any kind of encryption or any kind of technological things that we can build which will enable privacy or which will enable people to make a conscious choice of what kind of privacy they want. So as far as encryption is concerned, there are lots of legal questions there, right? If you encrypt, what all things can the government or somebody else decrypt? So a very elementary question I have is that, like, suppose I make a phone call, say I make a phone call to Kartik, and I talk in a language that only I and Kartik know, right? Is that legal? Let's say I make a conversation and I store it in a server. Now, can somebody come and look at the server and make a legal subpoena saying that I want the data in a knowledgeable fashion or in a translated to English? Is this something that we are legally forced to do? I don't know the answer to that question, and it is a very kind of a murky area. It's not clear whether, for example, if I make a phone call and I use a language that nobody else knows, but somebody else could come and say, hey, I need to convert this into a language that I know. So it is in a very gray area there. So that's why a lot of companies don't put their servers outside the US, and some European companies don't put their servers in the US just because of this reason. So even if you encrypt it, it's not really clear what is legal and what is not legal. Are there any lawyers in here? Maybe they can help or have some opinion. No? Okay. So data encryption, I think the one proposal, or at least thinking in my mind, is that if you have a secure email kind of thing, right? Secure email has been there for a long time. So secure email is where you encrypt data. But then the servers do store your encryption cookies and the data. So if somebody says that give me all the data in your server, you can still decrypt it, right? But maybe there's a way where if I'm communicating with Kartik, we can keep the encryption cookies only in my browsers. So all data will be encrypted, including the server. So people might give up personalization completely because the server side, you can never interpret what the data is. But at least you might get like full privacy in that case. So secure email is already there. But as you know, all this Snowden business, they were using secure email servers. But those got subpoenaed by the government and they have unencrypted everything. So the reason again is because the emails that are stored in the servers, they are encrypted, but the cookies are also there to unencrypt it. Because the server helps you store the cookies too. But if there's a way for, as an individual, to not store the cookies anywhere on the server, it's purely in my brain. It's like a password, right? You type in an email and you encrypt everything using your password. So the servers have no idea how to unencrypt it. So, but that's not, that technology nobody provides right now because it's not clear whether it's legal or not. There are some recent developments. Actually, you'd be amazed to see how much focus has been on this topic from the academic people in the last maybe 3-4 years. 2009, there's something called homomorphic encryption. This is the ability to query data without actually unencrypting it. So there's a paper which was produced like 3 years back, and there's been a lot of research after this on just this topic. I don't want to go into the details because I myself is not an expert on this, but I'm trying to learn some of these things to see how I can apply it to some of the stuff I work on. Similarly, there is another database where it's called CryptDB from MIT. This was maybe like earlier this year, which implements that algorithm. And then obviously everybody knows about Bitcoin, right? So how things are very untraceable if you use Bitcoin just because it uses something called Tor, which is software that, again, Tor is an open source project, so anybody can download and kind of play with it. So that lets you make sure that you cannot trace any of the origins of those Bitcoins. So that's all I have from my side. I wanted to kind of give out a perspective saying that privacy is, I think the privacy problem will finally be solved once we build enough technologies to solve it. Thank you. Any questions or anything?
Come back.
Okay, yeah.
Hello everyone. My name is Sanjay Soni and I lead the Semantic Research Labs. And I work with a lot of folks whose job is pretty much to look for what might call like the invisible burglars, and there are plenty in an online world. And what we find is that a lot of the techniques that these invisible burglars use are kind of similar to what a lot of the folks who would like to serve us personalized experience using their free services and apps. So I see a lot of overlap between the two. And so I have been a two-time entrepreneur prior to this, including in the area of encryption of stored data. And I personally don't believe that technology is the pure answer to solving the personalization versus privacy concerns. A lot of it is very, very subjective, cultural, and individualized, generational, you know. So you can't really pinpoint, you know, is it good or bad? It's up to each individual to make their judgment, what is good, what is bad, and what is ugly. Okay? Just to set the context, I have a few slides I'll walk you through. So this is from a public data source, just to give people a flavor of the kinds of information that some vendors know about that, and in turn, where that information may land up, because some guys are great at listening, including in other people's data centers. Okay? So my objective is not to drill down into basically each kind of data, how it's collected, what it is, you know, what you can do to prevent that, but just to give people an idea of, you know, when they use these free services, this is what they could be potentially exposed to. So they need to have an understanding of, you know, what they are giving up when they utilize free apps and services. Okay. Now, even more interesting is I came across this, and I'm sure many of you probably seen this. There are stores that are tracking you physically within 2 to 3 meters. You know, how much time are you spending in the kids section versus the jewelry section, and they are uploading this information in a cloud, and supposedly to provide analytics to the retail store vendors. And I'm not going to go deeper into this, into the technology they use, but it's basically something as simple as when you enter a retail store, you know, like your phones are looking for the nearest access point, and they're tracking your MAC addresses at a very simplistic level. That's what it is. But they're physically tracking you, so maybe sometime in the future, you walk down a grocery aisle, suddenly coupons will be popping up on your smartphones, depending on which aisle you are walking through.
Just a very brief clarification. You're assuming that the smartphone has Wi-Fi and it's turned on. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. What these
If
guys
it's not
assume.
Wi-Fi or it's not turned on, then they can't track you.
Yes, that's correct. Okay. So, I think what is probably relevant to at least today's discussion, in my opinion, is how is this data obtained? Do the users, do they have some choice? How many users read the end user license agreement, which has been designed with the finest lawyers? I don't know how many people do that. I never do that. You want a free app or service, agree, and you have it. So that is one. Then the second item that I would like to emphasize is what is the gap between the expected behavior of an app and the actual behavior. Now this is particularly bad, I would say, on a lot of the apps that at least some folks I know who've analyzed, the smartphone apps. You would expect like a mapping app to be tracking your location, but I wouldn't expect a wallpaper app to basically be tracking my location. So there's a gap between what people would typically expect an app of a given category to be doing and what the app actually does, right? And lastly, a key point that I would like to make is that it's all up to users, whether they use good judgment or not. I'll explain with an example. So this guy, Jason Miller, coincidentally used to work at NSA. He's put his job profile or his work profile and is using all the code words of all the projects that he knew of at NSA. And he put it out there. And this is just as an example, but the point I'm making is when you put out your information out there in public domain, yes, you are expecting recruiters, you are expecting, like sales guys to be calling you, right? But what you don't expect is your employers are watching you. Are you violating any social media policy? And then there are hackers who are looking at basically any intelligence that they can gain about a given enterprise and how they might be able to target that. And then obviously there are spy agencies that have at least known to put fake profiles on LinkedIn to lure specific users or target specific users. So that's all I have to say, at least for now.
Hello everyone, good evening. First of all, thanks to Ty for inviting me for as a panelist here. And actually, I moved to Bay Area 2 years ago, and it has been good to be involved with Thai organization. And thanks for organizing such wonderful events. Actually, I was at TaiCon earlier this year. As Saurabh said, it was a great event. Many thousand people showed up. So thanks for organizing such events. And to start with my introduction, my name is Mahesh Kumar. I run a boutique consulting company, Tiger Analytics. The company is focused on building custom solutions, consulting services for advanced analytics and predictive analytics. And prior to starting this company, which I've been running for 3 years, I was a university professor at MIT Sloan, Rutgers University, and University of Maryland. I taught in their business schools. And I have my PhD in operations management and marketing. So I've been doing analytics for almost 15-20 years ago, when analytics was not even hot area. So my lot of my comments would be around how data science could be used for personalization. And when Karthik and Piyush approached me for being part of this panel, similar to what Dhruva said. I know about personalization. I've done a lot of work around personalization, and privacy is something, a new topic, which is certainly a matter of concern. And I may not have a whole lot to talk about what can be done for privacy. It's an evolving area, and we will all figure out the solution for that. And I'll make some comments around privacy, but most of my comments would be around personalization, how analytics and data science can help in providing better personalized services. Okay, yeah. So, so one thing is while recent this NSA, Snowden, all those things has spurred this debate of personalization versus privacy. Personalization we have been seeing for many years. Amazon, Netflix, we've been seeing that for many years, and the concern has been more recent thing. But one thing I believe is personalization is a reality today. For the existence of how easily we adopt the world of free online world. We get free email, free videos on YouTube, social media content, music, everything. And the way this free world survives is because they have to show you ads. And we have done a lot of work in how personalization can be helpful in the advertising industry. They have to show you ads, and the more personalized ads they show, they get more revenue, and that's how they can create better content for your experience. So I'll talk more about how personalization has been helping in the advertising industry. And with regard to privacy, I think technologies and policies need to evolve so that both personalization and privacy can coexist. Right now, maybe we are not at a point. The equation may be more weighted, more shifted towards personalization. There's been a lot of many startups who have played a significant role in driving personalization, and being privacy is a new topic. I think there's a lot of technologies and policies will emerge over time, and this is just an early, beginning of this debate, and we will see those changes will come, and there will be opportunities for entrepreneurs. As well as there'll be need for policy people to think about what kind of policy to design so that both can coexist. We cannot think of that personalization is bad because it hurts my privacy. They will have to be coexisting. So one area where we have done a lot of work is in social media. You have all these avenues for expressing your information there, and people freely post all kinds of information. Many times people don't know, and especially there have been a lot of articles about young people, especially teenagers and all. They are a lot more liberal with expressing their information in public forums, and that's where whereas generally adults are more conservative about what to put out there. And so one has to be careful what information to put. For example, I was, an example was a few years ago, I was talking to one of my colleagues, and he was exchanging some, personal emails with his girlfriend using his work email. So I don't know, maybe you should not use your work email, maybe use some other, Google or something. But I delete my emails. He was so naive that he doesn't know that even after deletion, all the emails can be tracked. So, young teenagers and all, they may be naive about that the private information they're posting in social media can be tracked, can be misused, and those learning also have to be come in as part of the culture to protect private information. But there's a lot of private information one people put on social media, and there are easy, naive ways one can use this information for better ad targeting, and that we have done. Here's an example of somebody mentions that I'm traveling to Alaska to watch Northern Lights, and we did a project where we scored each individual on Twitter based on what you mentioned in all your posts, and then here the score for travel goes up, so all the travel related ads, they start showing up on your news feed, and it's a better experience. So overall, when you have personalized ads, it helps all the parties. There are three parties in online world. One is a user. User gets a better experience because you're getting personalized ads the same way as in Amazon. When you get personalized recommendations on Netflix, you like the experience. Once me and my wife traveled to a hotel, and I don't know how they found out, but they gave us a lot of anniversary gifts type of things. And somehow they figured out it was our anniversary. So it was a good experience. So people like when you get personalized experiences. So it's a good experience for the users when you see personalized services, personalized ads, and so on. And certainly good for advertisers because they get better click-through rate, better conversion. It's also good for publishers because they get relevant audience to the website. So personalization certainly a big value in this advertising industry. The key point I'm making here is that we have to continue with personalization, and new technologies and new policies have to evolve so that privacy can be protected.
Okay, so as we kick off the panel section of this event, I want to make one thing clear. The panelists here are representing themselves, not their companies. So much as we have Facebook and Symantec and Tiger and so on and so forth, we're all going to be speaking personal views. So let's all keep that in mind. So with that said, I'll jump into a couple of topics. The first one is, growing up in India, when you go shopping, and many of you can relate to this, there are always a number of people who belong to the shop always trying to help you out, right? So when I did repeat buying, they knew what I was looking for. They would say more of the same or what. So they knew everything about me, right? Nothing has changed for me. When I go to Amazon, they know everything about me. When I was growing up, they knew everything about me too. The big difference is we have options now, meaning you can block your cookies, there are opt-outs, there are various things. And the second key difference, which I think is the more alarming one, is anybody can start correlating or digging up information, right? Which is where the concern, in my opinion, comes in. I don't think many of us have objections to the personalization aspect of it because it makes our experience better, quicker, just more pleasant. But the alarming thing is, there's also the ability for somebody else to do anything to dig up and correlate events so they know you did this, this, and this. So my question is, just taking opinion here from the panelists, is this a technology problem? So did we invent all of this that is now hurting us? And is technology going to solve the problem too? Or is privacy more what we do rather than technology that, should handle it? Is technology the problem and the answer?
So yeah, I think in my mind, technology is the answer because it gives you a choice. So privacy is something that depends, varies from person to person, right? In my mind, something that I want to keep private, like say my anniversary, somebody else might not want to keep that private. So as long as you have technical tools, when I share this information, I know exactly whom I'm sharing with it and who has the ability to decipher that information and process it. I think that's the key. Right now, I don't see any difference between free stuff, I think that Sanjay mentioned. I don't think it has anything to do with free or non-free. If you are using a free app or you're using a paid app, it's the same thing. If you're sharing data, you need to know who gets to use that data. And right now the rules are not very clear in my mind. But I think technology will evolve quickly now to be able to give you these knobs and controls so that you can share more intelligently than just randomly sharing. And that's my opinion. Anything else you want to share?
Okay. I personally think it's not just a technology problem. To give you an example, there were folks at Stanford's crypto group who developed some technology around tracking locations where it's completely anonymized from the providers. So they went to some of these leading companies whose business model is built around ads. And all of them told them point blank, no, this is not in the interest of a business model. So I think there are competing interests over there. And the from a technology standpoint, technology pretty much mostly exists today. It's not adopted for a couple of reasons. One is that vendors have different business interests, and the second is, like, at least I can talk a little bit more authoritatively about the security community. Security and privacy are not necessarily the same thing, but privacy has never been successful from a commercial standpoint. I'll give you another example. This is probably dates about 8-9 years ago. I had a conversation with late Rajiv Motwani, who was doing a lot of work around Portia, which was the security and privacy project at Stanford, and he said, don't even get there. It's a minefield, not data mining, but it's a true minefield. Don't even go there. So I personally believe that it's not just a technology issue. Technology exists, mostly exists. Yes, you can talk homomorphic encryption and all that. You have that even to some extent. You have similar technologies that guarantee you can do certain operations basically at a provider without knowing about the end user. I think the real issue is, can you provide your app or service without individually pointing to the user whose data you are analyzing? Now, another example I'll give you is, if you know the birth month, year, and the zip code, you reduce the search space for a particular class of folks by less than 90%. So you're left with only about like 5 to 10% of the records you have to search through. So once again, I just don't agree that it's purely a technology issue.
Yeah, so, hello, yeah. So I believe, similar to what Sanjay said, it's a mix of both technology and some policy issue. As initially Piyush mentioned, somebody searching for knife in the workplace and HR calling it. So some policies need to be set, whereas the same search could be used by Google to provide personalized ads. That as long as Google does not share the data with anybody else, it doesn't hurt the individual. If the person is searching for knife and he gets more knife ads or more kitchen utensils ads, that's fine. But the HR people are using that information, it's violation of his privacy or her privacy. And if the person is not okay with that, there should be opt-in options, which many services provide, whether your information could be used for some further purpose or not. So those policies have to be evolved. And further, the point about there are a lot of work is being done where people anonymize your information before using it for any personalization. So that's another way to protect individual. And one way we have done, we work with many companies, many verticals where one cannot do, especially in healthcare. Healthcare, the data is, people are a lot more concerned about the privacy. They have been, unlike in advertising industry, like in Google and all, they have been a lot more freedom about using your personal information for a variety of purposes. But healthcare has been more strict, more stringent about using personal information. Right from the beginning, there are HIPAA policies. So there we have built models where they can target groups of customers as opposed to individual customer. So they are not allowed to use an individual customer information for any kind of targeting, any kind of analysis. What they do is they target groups of individuals as opposed to having a common message. So there are two extremes. If you don't do any personalization, then you're showing the same ad or same product to all the individuals. That's another one extreme. Whole population gets the same message. On the other extreme, you're providing an individual with each specialized message. But there are intermediate points where one provides a group of individuals a common customized message, a common customized product. So there are ways to get around the privacy concern, both by if you design right policies, or if you do right level of anonymization of data to protect individuals' privacy.
Yeah. So I kind of agree with all of that. The consensus seems to be that technology is the enabler. You clearly need to keep innovating. both in terms of providing more personalization as well as enabling privacy. By enabling privacy, I mean providing those options so people can block certain things or opt out of certain targeted ads. I remember that, I can't remember the name, but American Express pioneered this thing called something like a blue eye or a black eye concept, where on an ad, there would be that little blue eye or whatever color the eye was. You click on it and it will reveal information about why you were getting that selection of ads. So then you have an option to opt out of wherever that information was being collected from. I don't think it went anywhere because I haven't seen that in years now. But just to sum it up, I think we all agree that technology is definitely the enabler of both privacy as well as personalization. But clearly what is lacking today is a fine definition of what can be collected and how it can be used and what level of anonymization has to be applied. In some areas, I think it's much clearer than others. Healthcare is a very good example. The TSA screening is a good example too, where all of the X-ray scans were initially met with a lot of resistance, but the policy there was the person who's scanning is not the person who's actually sitting at the location. There's a certain level of indirection applied, right? So that's tantamount to anonymization of the data. But in some cases, you definitely need to be very personalized because you want to be presented a specific product. Some you have to be more anonymized. So we'll move on. So one of the things that we talked about was options for the end user. Today, you can do private browsing on your Safari browser. Right? That's an option some people can use. You can block certain types of cookies depending on the browser. But beyond that, for the average guy, what technologies or options exist easily without having to go to your library location and killing all the cookie files? What other options exist for consumers today, as well as enterprise users, to have some level of control on what data is being collected about them? Maybe, Mahesh, you can start and we'll go the other way.
My knowledge may be a little limited in the space of what technologies exist. But certainly, one thing is lacking is just the knowledge to individuals. What technology exists. One is the existing technology, but the other thing is how are the users knowledgeable about them? That these technologies exist for them to block the information. For example, on Facebook, there are public profiles and there are private profiles. The option exists, the technology exists within Facebook to make your profile private so that people cannot see your, the people who are not connected with you cannot see your posts. But a lot of, we do work on Facebook and we find that more than 10% profiles are public profiles, and often because they just leave the default option, they don't have the knowledge. Even cookie cleaning or deleting, I have personally never done that. I'm technically maybe not the most savvy person. I probably don't even know how to go and clean. I'll most likely ask my wife, okay, she's more technically savvy, or how to clean the cookies. So just having knowledge also that what options exist for, they don't have to be very sophisticated technologies. Many times people are lacking the just basic knowledge of how to protect their information. So even that awareness would be quite helpful.
Sanjay, Dhruva, any comments?
I don't know how many people, how many people are aware of this Do Not Track initiative. So I think almost all the browsers now do support some kind of option on Do Not Track. So I would strongly encourage people to use that. But it is still based on an honor-based system. So the websites that you go to have to pretty much honor that. But that's probably a good start that I can think of. Some of the other things that I can think of is there's a free software called Ghostry. If you install it, it's like a browser plugin. You can see all trackers essentially as you are browsing through the page. So those are some of the things that will provide you some insights on as to who is tracking you and to what extent.
Yeah, I think there is an entrepreneur idea there is that if you can provide utilities to a user to figure out how you're being tracked. That itself could be a great thing for some product group who somebody might build. Again, I think it's not about policy, because again, about policy, if I have a policy, let's say I sign a policy with New York Life when I do my life insurance, right? But if the government comes to New York Life and says, I need this data, you're legally bound to give it. So a policy can do nothing there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was reading about this recently. When you get a subpoena as a company from the government, you pretty much have to hand over the data. It doesn't matter at that point if the NSA collected the data or the telephone company did. The government can go to the telephone company, subpoena the total of the data, and they're liable to give it. So it almost doesn't matter. And kind of agree with the opportunity here for entrepreneurs too. Is there a one-stop product that takes all of this input here that was just given by Mahesh and Sanjay and Dhruva and puts it into 2 or 3 levels, saying, I want to be completely non-trackable, and that means it goes and kills all the cookies and does whatever else it needs to do, and a second level and third level perhaps. So you don't have to go to multiple places, you don't have to go RM star in your cookie folder and things like that. That is clearly an opportunity, and I haven't seen a product like that. I have seen the Ghost Tree product, as well as Safari has built into it too, in preferences in the privacy tab, a list of whose cookies there are, third-party cookies on your system. You can go clean it, but not a lot of people are savvy. However, if there were a product that does this, it's definitely usable. So,
Maybe ask a question. I have an alternative.
sure. You have an alternative? You don't want to give away the product idea?
No, what I'm saying is, see, personalization is like having a personal assistant. Okay? So 10 years ago, for example, when I thought about personalization, I thought personal assistants will sit on my laptop. What has happened over the last 10 years is now this personal assistant sits on the cloud, basically.
You don't want anybody sitting on your lap, believe me.
No, I'm just saying, it's a smart agent, AI agent. So why is this AI agent not sitting on my laptop the way Vision was 15 years ago? What happened over the last 10 years is that AI agent is not sitting on the cloud, basically. What should happen is I have a laptop, I have a smart agent sitting on my laptop, and it feeds, when it needs some information, it sends some information to the cloud, say Google, for example. All of us, it should send the same information from all of us to the cloud. The personalization should happen on my laptop, basically. That's not the problem.
Yeah.
So that was the original vision of the personal assistant 15 years ago. Google has kind of, and all these companies have, for their own purpose, they have converted the definition of personal assistant.
So I don't know if everybody heard that. It's a question of whether data collection should be done at the laptop or on the cloud.
Yeah. So all the analysis, the laptops are powerful enough. They have enough storage. Terabytes of storage, basically. So there's no shortage of storage also. In fact, even our email should be stored on a laptop. There's enough memory is there. One thing is some kind of transmission, reconciliation, and traffic management can be done on the cloud. Okay. It's just it happened by default. Nobody questioned it, and why don't you just reverse the business model, basically?
So I think
Or the technology model. That's the simplest technology solution.
So I'll say a thing or two, but if you guys want to jump in too. Yes, there are agents sitting on your laptop. Your activities on the laptop are also queryable, collectible. There is data that is being collected there too. There are calendar agents. There are other kinds of telltale signs on your laptop too, event logs and things like that. But anyone else have?
So I think there are 2 different things you're talking about, right? One is personalization, but the other one is like, say, what all websites are you visiting right now, right? So that could be something that you cannot do sitting on your laptop, because it's like physically going to a store. So the store owner knows that you have visited his store. So you cannot take that back.
No, the argument I'm making is personalization is like having a personal assistant. Okay, my servant, okay? That is good. I would like the personal assistant. But that assistant should sit on my laptop, not on the cloud, basically. That's my only argument. And if you think on this line, I think it's not an issue of the computing power. I have enough storage. I can go buy 1 more terabyte of storage, basically. I have enough computing power on the laptop. So why is it there on the cloud, basically, on my assistant, not on the laptop?
Okay.
And if you think on this line, probably you can solve the problem without using all the algorithms.
So let's talk about a couple of use cases. So we've talked a lot about personalization, the good elements of it. And I think in all of our jobs before, we've dealt with a lot of use cases that deal with data, personalization, serving the right products or whatever it is. So I want to go around, maybe starting with Dhruva, to provide some insights into key use cases that that are being driven by technology from a personalization standpoint. These are the good elements, right, as opposed to the disaster about privacy.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that personalization helps. Take, for example, very exotic examples maybe, like driving directions, right? Right now, if you use driving directions, let's say, from one place to another, you will get things which are kind of very algorithmic driven. But if you look at how people have been traveling from that place to the exact other place over time, you could get better routes. So I think it depends on the area that you are applying your algorithm to. The other areas are things like Mahesh mentioned, healthcare. If you know how a person is behaving, how his lifestyle is, you could actually draw a positive analysis about healthcare. Like, let's say, like if you can sample a wide section of people and find out real causes and like effects and causes, like how your lifestyle is versus how many miles you run, what all things you do every day, and then you figure out that maybe if you do these things, then you have improved life, healthcare support. I mean, you don't have to suffer illnesses. I think there are lots of things that will be happening in the future. Some of them sound creepy to us right now. I mean, same thing in 1999 or something, somebody said, hey, do your taxes online. And some guys felt it very creepy at a time, right? But now it's the norm. So I think it is just going to be different things that we haven't visualized yet, how it could impact us positively.
I can share a number of use cases. That's what we do at Tiger Analytics. A lot of work about how to use data science on individual level information to do personalized offerings. So a standard use case is online ad targeting that we all know. Google does Facebook does, all kinds of ad platform. That's a very standard use case. How to target an individual for this particular ad. We have variety of ads we do. So this is a very common use case, all of you know about that. The other very common use case is recommendation engine. And while Netflix and Amazon, everyone knows about that, we recently did a project on, there's a company, a small company, Curious.com. They show online teaching videos, similar to Khan Academy. They show educational videos. And we did recommendation engine for them. Every time somebody finishes watching a video, then we show them personalized recommendation, what other videos you may like. And we saw that the view-through rate, the customers' engagement increased significantly by 20-30% compared to what they had previously. So certainly their customers liked it. And it was just tracking all customers' user view. Now, more exotic use case, we recently had a conversation with Jaguar, the leading, the leading car companies, and we are in active discussion of a project there. Is they want to design a customized experience when you sit in your car. So they want the whole idea is when you sit, the whole your temperature control and mirror and everything will be customized when you sit in the car. And they want to customize for a family. They may have 5 family members. Every time you sit in the car, or your wife or your son sits in the car, they have to adjust the mirrors and everything. So based on, you can just they'll identify your profile based on your weight and height and all those things, and auto adjust things. And they will also know that in this particular temperature, you tend to like this temperature setting. So they'll do all kinds of customization in the car. So this is a more exotic use case. Again, these are, there's a lot of use of personalization in the medical industry. The talks are about designing personalized medicine. Right now, when you buy medicine, you get even generic drug or prescription drugs. They are common to everyone. The doctors find, okay, you have a choice of 10 different tablets, right? Or 20 different tablets. But they can, based on your individual health profile, they can customize medicines. So again, that's an area of research happening and can benefit a lot to individuals. So a lot can be benefited by personalization, and we have to keep innovating in the direction while keeping in mind that what technologies and policies need to be put in place so that we are comfortable with our privacy of information.
I'll just talk about a slightly different kind of use case, like if I'm NSA or whoever, right? How do I prevent the next Bradley Manning from exfiltrating a whole bunch of information? Or if I am a large corporation, and I have some key intellectual property, how do I prevent basically an insider from stealing that stuff, right? So a lot of the similar kinds of things that you've heard that relate to personalization, collection of data, data science, analytics, they pretty much apply to also identifying potentially rogue employees, malicious insiders, right? So that is one use case. The second use case I would say is basically like social network analysis. Facebook uses it for serving you ads. Who else might be interested in something similar, right? We in security community use that same concept to see, who are the folks with whom you collaborate on specific projects. So like if you're using a shared repository, like a SharePoint, what kind of permissions that you should get as your peers are getting, so from an access control standpoint. Now, obviously, NSA uses it for the same techniques, but for some other purpose. It's been well publicized, I think, in New York Times. They use something very similar.
So in fact, one of my upcoming topics was what are some of the use cases that can be applied within the enterprise. So this conversation about privacy and personalization is often construed to be a consumer problem or a consumer related thing, right? However, our day lives, we are consumers, but our day lives are in the enterprise. So a lot of the techniques that are being applied to personalization and tracking people and behavior can indeed be applied in the IT environments of our companies too, as in something that Sanjay just mentioned, malicious insiders, yes. What about standard IT things too? For example, provisioning, right? Are more and more people using this application versus not, or how are they using this application? And if they're using this application, what other application are they using too? So it's IT profiling, and it's all legitimate. It's happening within the enterprise. There's no privacy issue there. It's just that, if I'm using this CAD program and then I'm using this other, Paint, Photoshop, or whatever else I'm using, it's a great way for IT to decide what is best suited for the environment, what kind of a profile should they be provisioning, how do they build VMs with those applications pre-packaged in a lot of those applications, right? So any comments? And Sanjay, you come from the enterprise environment. Do you see any of this enabling enterprise IT to get more intelligent, right? Why aren't enterprise IT people? Maybe they are, but my assumption is they're not.
Well, I just quote basically something from Star Trek. I may have watched it years ago, Spock and Kirk, they go back in time, and this guy says this is a planet where they have stone knives and bear skins. So it's a little bit like that in a lot of the IT environments. So one of the surprises that I have is basically in this new age, where you have basically a lot of predictive analytics. None of that is applied as aggressively to day-to-day IT operations that folks do. And I see that basically as a huge opportunity for someone to do it in a more focused way as opposed to one-off things that each vendor does.
So often, being in the high-tech valley, we talk about the technology aspects of things, and in this discussion we haven't yet. So it's time to talk about that. And as Ruba mentioned in his own introduction, he's one of the pioneers of bringing in Hadoop and other related technologies. to the world. And so one of the questions I have to all of them is, what are these technologies that are helping make available technologies that can, for instance, do searches on billions of records, provide instantaneous response, right? NLP, natural language processing. Hadoop to put everything into a big, commodity, cheap, storage to do some analysis. So what are some of these technologies, that people are using?
So the first level of software or technology that we built was the infrastructure, right? To be able to store thousands of petabytes or hundreds of petabytes of data. And so the interesting thing is that since that time, a lot of these technologies are being built in open source, which is great because then a lot of people can use it. So infrastructure is the first one that I saw, Hadoop and Hive and some other technologies that we have built. There are some deficiencies in those technologies because they're very batch processes, and now people are talking more about very real-time analytics. So there are new set of technologies being built in the infrastructure. As far as mining data, we are starting to see a lot of platforms which let you do more statistical analysis on this data. So previously people used to write their own clustering algorithms or own like subsectioning algorithms on all the data. But now there are some prepackaged solutions in open source technologies that you can use. So a lot of the guys who are trying to write these things can do this very easily by using some of these open source technologies. The other ones I see are that a lot of infrastructure is cloud-based now. So the moment it is cloud-based, you have good ways. I mean, you don't have to invest a lot of capital costs to mine some of this data. You could do, like, say, sample a little bit of the data and then run your algorithms on that sample. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is going to just grow tremendously now, based and apply these. What I see is that a lot of these things have been built for what I call is like advertising computations, right? Or computational advertising. But I see it being applied to many other domains, vertical domains, in the very soon.
So before you give your mic,
Yeah.
some of the technologies you want to name?
Oh yeah, so yeah, absolutely. So if you're talking about more real-time processing, you could think about, like, say, Apache Mahout is one project which does a lot of k-means clustering, random forests. You don't have to implement these things again. It's basically a merge between statistical packages being implemented once and for everybody to use, right? A lot of these things were written in Fortran earlier, and probably everybody tried to write their own algorithms. Similarly, for more real-time processing, I'm seeing like Shark and Spark and some more commercial companies taking a lead in some of those. But yeah, so that's. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so when we're dealing with like individual level data, you can imagine the data could be huge. People have been tracking, Facebook would have hundreds of millions of customers, and they are tracking so much of data. So it just becomes, terabyte is tiny, some petabyte or what byte they call it. So the data is huge. So of course you need to bring in all the technologies of big data like Hadoop and so on. But one thing we have found in some of our work, one can do intelligent sampling and not have to worry as much about the big data challenge as much. While there are a lot of technologies are evolving right now to how to do clustering or k-means or forecasting and so on big data. But we have found in many projects we have done intelligent sampling, and one example I always quote is, have you Gallup poll, right? People do know the sampling of before any election. So there was Mr. Gallup, who was a statistician, and the reason he became popular, I don't remember exactly, some election, Eisenhower's election, he did a small sample, less than 1 million people sample, and conducted this referendum, and then he predicted, okay, Eisenhower is going to win. And the alternate agency, they did a huge 10 million customers, but the sampling was not appropriate. And his results were more accurate at 1/100th of the cost. So if you do right sampling, you can get fairly accurate results. So the technology challenge can be overcome to large extent in many of these problems. So one doesn't have to necessarily worry in all circumstances of all the big data technologies. We have, in many situations, we have overcome technology problems by right sampling of the data. And then other technologies, we have used a lot of natural language processing because a lot of information that you put out there is textual information. In fact, text data is growing faster than numerical data. Even right now, I don't know exact estimate, but this is pretty large volume. And here in Silicon Valley, people don't work on many government data, but I lived in Washington, D.C. for many years. And there, doing work for government is a common thing. And government has a huge amount of text data. Huge amount. There's a lot of work going on using natural language processing. So that's another technology, and number of tools, technologies are evolving there. We have, at my company, we have used a lot of work around Python has very good libraries for NLP that we have used, and so on.
I just have a couple of comments. So one is, it all starts with data. Do you have the right data? And if you don't have it, you've got to figure out, at least if you're starting out as an entrepreneur, how will you get the right data? So that is number one. The second point is that, yes, all these are tools, but at the end of the day, it's the domain-specific expertise, which is most important. 95% of all these algorithms will give you a result within 1 or 2% if you have the right features, if you have the right intuition for the domain. If you don't have that, all bets are off. So I would say that use tools for what they are, basically tools, but it's not a replacement for having the deep domain knowledge for which you are essentially analyzing data.
Very good. So we'll do a couple more questions, maybe two more, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for some Q&A. One of the more important things I think to consider is, this is not unique, the whole conversation about privacy and loss of privacy is not unique to the US, right? European countries have always been more stringent in privacy, right? They've figured out a way to have a nice blend and mix between the two. So my question is, what have they done differently? For example, Europe, let's just take specifically Europe. London is supposed to be the most networked city in the world from a video camera and surveillance standpoint. You cannot walk 10 feet without being filmed on 1 or 2 cameras. And they've learned to live with it, right? And the goal there is anti-terrorism. So everybody recognizes that. There's hardly been any objections about it. It's been existent for a very long time. And Europe in general, from a policy standpoint, has been very, very private, in that HR people know that you cannot transfer records that belong to European employees outside of their own country. You cannot ship those records out. There's a number of regulations like that. So is that what we need to, is there something we need to learn from? Or have they gone overboard and have people just adjusted to it? Or is there something to learn from? So what should we be learning from other countries, perhaps? Maybe you want to kick it off,
In certainly, in Europe, as you said correctly, there's a lot more stringent regulations, and people have, and that may be the way to go here. Might be some, as I've been saying repeatedly in my various comments, that some regulations, some policies have to evolve to protect privacy, and people also, it's also cultural change. People have to get used to this thing. As you said, in Europe, it has been going on for a very long time. The way there's no TSA camera thing, the screening, there was a lot of objection, there were a lot of articles, people got used to it, and I don't see any objection anymore. So that has to happen, and maybe in the US is a more recent thing. 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, both things will happen. Some policies will evolve so that people's privacy will be protected. People will feel more comfortable, and individuals also, there would not be as much of a hue and cry about for every piece of information. People start, start shouting. So that both will evolve over time. And there are some countries, you talk about countries and cultures, where it's very common. People share info, like most of you are from India here, and you may see, people share information and they are very casual about it there. And nobody objects. The objection would be there, but much less compared to what we see in the US or in Europe. So there are cultural differences about how people perceive of utilizing of private information, and in the US it will evolve closer to what we are seeing in Europe.
So, yeah, I think regarding the thing about cameras that you said in London. Now, in my view, I think if you're in a public place, if you're on the street, there is no privacy. So whether this camera is recording you every time or not, I think that question probably is not related to privacy, because the moment you step out on a private road, you could be being photographed from a satellite, right? So I think, and also the privacy laws are very different from England and Germany, right? So Germany is like much more, people are more conscious, I think. Also, I think there will be a difference when the population ages. So I think there are more people in the US who are less than like 20 years old who are using technology versus Europe. So that could be another reason why in this area at least Europe could be slightly lagging behind, in the sense how to adapt to new technologies and still take care of your privacy.
One problem that I foresee is basically going in this regulatory direction in, at least in the United States, is the business interests will always be up against it, and they are very, very powerful, much more than probably those in Europe. So I see that as a struggle between the business interests and the privacy advocates, much more than probably in Europe.
So interestingly, Sanjay, to your point just now, the lobby is essentially what you're talking about. I learned, I think, at, just before another panel I did hear of you, that the gun shops that sell guns locally do not really keep digital records of who buys guns. And not a lot of people know that. And the way I became aware of that is when I read an article about some gun owners who had lost their guns in floods or whatever other natural disasters. I think this may have been after one of the recent storms. They wanted to go back to the gun shop and say, do you have my serial number, or do you have anything I can trace my gun with, because a lot of my belongings have lost. And I want to report them as being lost. And the gun shop then told him that they are not required to keep digital records. In fact, the NRA has a powerful lobby against the digitization of gun owner records. And therefore, these are paper trails, which they keep for 5 years or maybe longer. But that's about it. So you're absolutely right about, you don't want to go to an extreme from a policy standpoint such that the lobby becomes too hard and then you are not able to achieve what you want to do. Rather, it should be more weaved into the fabric of the culture, of the way we do things, so that it is acceptable by all parties that certain things will be regulated and certain things will not be regulated. So that's a very prime example of, I don't think we can force our way into privacy with policy. It needs to be more accepted. And one last question, and this I'll do a little poll. How many people in the audience have a pair of Google glasses? No one lucky enough to do that yet. Okay. So the question is, and there's no right or wrong answer here, the question is, Google Glass, is it good or bad or ugly?
It's coming.
We don't have much comments other than I like wearable technology, but no specific comments about Google Glass.
Same opinion.
Yeah, I haven't seen them yet, so no comments.
Fair enough. So if there is, yeah, you know, that's a good way to kick it off for the audience. So show of hands, who thinks it's a good thing? Google Glass is a good thing. You will want it, and it's a good thing for the world. So one, just one. Surprising. Well, there's a few more. Okay. So the rest of you are, I'm guessing, strongly against them. Right? Okay.
No, wait and watch.
Wait and watch. You want to see how well it works first before you say yes or no. But let's do some questions, Rajiv.
No, I was just going to comment that it's not about Google Glass, but I really
Wait for the mic. Yeah.
I may not care much for Google Glass, but wearables is something different, and Google Glass is just one wearable. So there might be better wearables than Google Glass.
Yeah. So I think the point I was trying to make there was absolutely right. I'm a big fan of wearables in concept, like Fitbit. It's supposed to do good, right? I mean, it's a great thing. The difference with Google Glass and any other wearable is Google Glass tells you information about who you're watching, as opposed to a wearable, which is really gathering your metrics. So a little bit of a difference, but let's take some questions, comments. Yes.
Okay, you brought up a very interesting point. So there's a trend that's starting to develop, corporate wellness programs, right? If you join a program to get your cells tested, get the biometrics going, and they offer you a discounted new premium, right? So it's forcing people to sort of get into a healthy lifestyle, right? So that for large companies that are self-insured, costs go down. But there's a program afoot to start giving employees wearable devices so that they can start collecting data, and then that way kind of encourage them to lead a better lifestyle. The question is, that opens up a Pandora's box in terms of what will they do, what will corporate entities do with these kind of data, and they're collecting, vitals, right? Today, you're scratching the surface of wearable devices. You know, you can get your heart rate, your active physical activity, your sleep patterns. Tomorrow, it can go into, detecting arteriosclerosis in your, in your bloodstream. So where do you draw a line there in terms of what corporate entities can collect and what will they be able to do with it, notwithstanding whether you consent to it or not?
Yeah. I'll give you my 2 cents. I would love to have the panelists respond to this too. But the 2 things that come to my mind are, one is absolutely have a level of control on what you want shared and what you don't want shared, or even better, what you want monitored and what you don't. It's just like, what are the user's options today in the digital world, blocking cookies or whatever else. When there is an option for you to wear a device or encouragement from the company or whatever to, have a Fitbit or something else on you, I think along with that should come options as to what you want monitored and what you want shared. I think that's fundamentally important. The second is you want to maintain a level like a Chinese wall between your, HR or management being able to see these records and being influenced in any way from a career, standpoint, right? You don't want your heart disease to be the reason why you don't get promoted, right? So maybe there's, it's along the lines of policy, but I think it's a bit more than that. It has to be implemented too. And companies that I've worked for, like Goldman Sachs, have a great Chinese wall for certain things, especially HR related. And perhaps, so those are the 2 things that come to my mind. One, options from your side as to what can be measured and monitored and shared. And 2, a definite set of policies implemented in technology that disallow certain people from seeing certain things, right?
Sometimes it feels to me that like wearables are like uniform. There are some jobs that you have to wear a uniform to do your job, right? So as long as there are certain rules like what kind of uniform you can wear or what kind of dress you cannot wear, I think the same kind of rules need to be there for like your all the data that is being collected. Does it make sense?
Yep. Mahesh?
So one more thing, as these new ways of collecting data are coming in, as I mentioned earlier, any company, any corporation that encourages its employees for this kind of program, new programs, there should be good education also. And very transparency about what data is being collected and what the data will be utilized for. So having a clear transparency in the process. It should not be that one day an employee finds out, oh, my data is being tracked and I never knew about it. So that will also be very helpful in addition to providing opt-in options. They are similar to like what's there in the online world, as well as having some policies where things stretch out of the boundary. So there should be some policy, as I mentioned earlier, that the HR decision should not be influenced by such kind of data.
Any more questions? We have time for one more.
Last Thursday, is this on?
Yes.
Last Thursday at Santa Clara University, there was a California state legislative panel that I attended. And at that panel, there were 4 different threats to individuals' privacies that were identified. I like the panel's perspective on what safeguards, technology, policies, or procedures could possibly inhibit those threats. The number 1 threat, which you haven't even talked about, was identity theft. The second threat was government overreach, NSA and other agency spying. The third was the theft of medical or banking records. And the fourth, which most people really didn't care about according to the polls, was this personalization and targeted advertising, which seems to be the main focus of web companies these days. So I'll stop and turn over to the panelists to respond. Thank you.
Sure. Though we didn't name specific threats within the realm of privacy, identity theft, financial or other loss of data, which includes, identity, is key. Spam, the last one you talked about, the advertising, etc. I think that's more of a benefit.
That's not spam. That's Amazon or.
That's not spam. That's Amazon or Google collecting data, using it themselves, or selling it to advertisers. That wasn't a big issue. But I'm just wondering what panelists think that users can do to protect themselves against these 4 different threats that were identified at the California State Legislature. Not hearsay, but real talk. Thanks.
Right. I think the question of identity or other kinds of theft is included in the privacy discussion that so we didn't specifically by design go into specific kinds of threats. Privacy is a superset of all of that. So it is very important. I mean, that is exactly what we're talking about, is how can we prevent all of these from overreaching. I won't say much about the NSA. I think much has been said, nor do I have any opinion on how much the government can collect or cannot collect. The essential thing there is the government does have the ability to subpoena for information as it needs. And recently I was listening to a debate on the radio that talked about perhaps the telephone companies, to take one example of telephone records, should be the custodians of the information. And as needed, the government, in a targeted fashion can get whatever they want, but not the whole world. And that's, I think, the best way to handle it is let the custodians be the custodians with the provision, clear provision, that their business model is not to sell this data. So no one should be permitted to sell the data that they collect. If they use it for their own targeted product or advertisement placement reasons, that's one thing. To be able to sell the data should be denied, I think, because some people are in this situation where they're able to collect all of this. To sell it is not correct. So these are some of the things that I think have to be implemented in terms of policy as well as legislation. Maybe there are other things.
I think the first 3 things that you mentioned, identity theft and government overreach and medical and bank records, those problems have been there for a long time. Is the personalization, I think, where we kind of focused on today, it's because it hasn't been there. Like 10 years back, you won't have seen that much of personalization. But as far as identity theft is concerned, I think there are 2 sides to this coin. Right now, a lot of financial companies can do actually quick fraud detection just because they have a big database that they can crunch, and that actually prevents some of the identity thefts, or make sure that identity theft cannot continue for too long, because they can detect these patterns. But my point to your question, I think, is that the first 3 points have been kind of talked a lot about in many other discussions. That's why I think we kind of purposefully went to more towards the personalization thing, which is in the borderline between like privacy and creepiness sometimes. And that's the point that we kind of focus on.
You guys have any comments? Yes.
So as you know, other two people mentioned, so the topic we are covering here is an overarching topic of privacy, which covers the first three things, and the fourth one, personalization, is we see as a benefit. And there are already regulations, government regulation for identity theft. I'm sure, no, if one is found, I don't know exact what regulations are, but one is found as identity theft, there will be some criminal offense against them. So there are regulations, but the problem that I think what you're referring to is because of personalization, there's a lot more data is being collected, and it encourages more of those things. It becomes easier to do identity theft, banking fraud, and even for government to access this information and raise people's concern. If there was less personalization, this is simply a trade-off that we have been debating today, whole evening, that because of more and more personalization, it becomes easier to do all the previous three kinds of things. So how do we manage this trade-off? Personalization is a benefit, and other three things are concerned to all of us. So in that trade-off, as we have been discussing throughout this evening, that personalization is a good thing, and all kinds of things, cultural change, policies and technologies will evolve over time to manage this trade-off so that we all become comfortable.
So I'll comment a little bit about the identity theft part, So I'll draw two analogies, One is basically people get mugged online, which is the equivalent of like consumers kind of giving up their identity, being deceived or being gullible to a whole bunch of social engineering tricks, which come via like emails that look very innocuous, right? The second I would say is like a bank robbery. Someone who has a whole bunch of identities and it's stolen en masse. So that's the two analogies I would draw with respect to the identity theft.
Sanjay, if I may just add one more before I ask my question, actually. To that point, recently I've come across a case, or a number of cases, where people will do something to your machine in such a manner that you will not have access to your data at all, and a message will pop up. If you want access to your hard drive data, you got to deposit X amount of dollars somewhere.
That happens.
It's called ransomware.
All right, sure.
It's called ransomware.
Right. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Berlin, Germany, and that's exactly what happened to my colleague. And he was so upset, and he was calling the corporate headquarters. Help, has anyone else found it? It seemed like an isolated thing to the wireless network that was in that particular hotel that we were having this conference in. So that's one aspect of the problem that we talked. Now, the other thing, I don't know, and I was in and out of the room, so I don't know if you guys touched upon, in this era of privacy and personalization, the ownership of data. Have we established who owns the data? And as an individual, have we decided that if I don't want my data to be out there in public, I can tell the government enough is enough, no more of my data online. And at the same time, my corollary to this question would be, are the governments ready or with their policies which are mature enough to tackle this problem and actually not act like what happened when the diplomatic snoop happened with Germany or with Brazil, and it was like an embarrassment to the US. So hopefully there's enough citizen voice and also amongst all of us here who will be able to sign petitions to form policies, and hopefully this movement will lead to somewhere which will find a good balance between privacy, personalization, and profitability, and good governance. Comments from the panel, please.
So there's nothing to do but agree with a bunch of that, right? So a lot of what we collect, it's very hard to pinpoint exactly who owns what, right? It's very hard to pinpoint, very hard to enforce too. It's in theory a very good thing for you to be able to say everything that I did, my browsing history and the purchases that I made and the recommendations that I accept or the ads that I click on belong to me. But that's a very hard thing to argue and enforce, much less. So I think it has to evolve. There's a lot of thin lines between who owns what and your preferences about who should own what. So that's a very difficult thing in my mind to not even define, but even more so enforce. So, but I do agree with the concept of being able to do that. Yes, we'll take one last question.
Yeah, my question related to your closing point on Google Glass, whether it is right or wrong or good or bad. Actually, the question comes up with the recent one LinkedIn influencer on LinkedIn ranting about why he hated Google Glass because it was an etiquette thing and a privacy thing. But actually, today, with pervasive devices, you can record conversations and never know, without letting anybody else realize it.
Exactly.
And so it is not really a certain device or a wearable. It is that who's the custodian of the data and who's actually owning it. Large companies like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and Google, they are actually custodians of our data, not really owners of our data.
Exactly.
So it's time that they allowed individuals or consumers to have that ownership to say that if somebody accessed my data, they should let us know, whether it is another company or another recruiter or anybody, whoever.
Yeah.
So that kind of ownership, and it is as if since they collected the data, they own it. And that kind of boundary is not defined.
Absolutely right.
So I think there are some complications I see in that kind of scenario. One is basically data which is easy to attribute to an individual, right? Then there are indirect inferences that people can make, right? It's like connecting the dots. So how do you kind of essentially safeguard against something like that? And that's very, very hard even from a technical standpoint.
All right, so with that, we will close the panel. The panelists will remain for a little bit, so if you want to come up and have a conversation, happy to do that. So thank you for your time. We enjoyed the interaction. We look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you.